Hello. Today we're going to read Chapter 14, Holocaust Deniers and Hate Groups. We'll be reading from the Never Again, Still Means Never Again. Chapter 14. The quote up top on the book is, quote, "Terrorism is the best political weapon, for nothing drives people harder than a fear of sudden death." End quote. Adolf Hitler. So, you've gotten this far in the book. Hopefully, you are questioning your allegiance to a mass-murdering, drug-addled, thieving, lying mental case. If not, there's a good chance you may be psychotic. One topic that I rarely discuss or debate is the reality of the Holocaust. Why? By debating it with some idiot, other idiots might think I'm defending it. Let's look at who didn't defend it at the time when the Jews were liberated from the camps. How about everyone who was put on trial in Germany? How many of them said it never happened? How about every Allied soldier who liberated the camps, soldiers from multiple countries who saw firsthand accounts of the aftermath? What about the large amounts of non-Jewish minorities that were in these camps together who vouched for the massive murders of Jews and others? Lies, right? 55,000 former Nazi guards. Can you tell us how many of them said, nothing to see here? The only thing former Nazi guards have said, and all 55,000 have said it, was simply, we were ordered to do it. Give us some names who said it didn't happen, and stop trying to spin your perpetual wheels of ignorance and lies. The problem for deniers is they can't find any of these people who were actually there denying it. Why would I debate with some racist who feels he or she has, quote, uncovered, end quote, the truth over the statements of hundreds of thousands of eyewitnesses? I've been to Germany. You still can't bring up the Holocaust there. The Germans still feel embarrassed and ashamed. They don't deny it. It's taught in their schools. The country has dedicated memorials and has paid billions and billions in reparations. You know, the place where it happened. However, you clowns have somehow concluded it was all a ruse and it never happened. You would have to be logically prejudiced or willfully ignorant to believe that the Holocaust never happened. Hence, why I don't defend the argument. There is none. After witnessing a concentration camp firsthand, Dwight D. Eisenhower immediately ordered all camps to be filmed, lest someone ever deny what took place here. In most cities and villages where these camps were located, the citizens were rounded up and given a tour. Please read some of the literature or see their reactions from the camps that they visited and point out the ones who said it didn't exist. Was Eisenhower in on this big hoax? Were the soldiers who liberated these camps from various countries bamboozled into witnessing these staged events too? Also, why deny it? Wouldn't the Holocaust be your crowning jewel of achievement? Wouldn't you be the biggest cheerleaders of the Holocaust and how they pulled it off? The great mass murder in history was done by your heroes, and some of you morons want to deny it? Why? Try visiting a Holocaust museum, read a bit of history, watch a documentary. As mentioned earlier, no one in Germany, including the military, guards, civilians, and the government, denied the Holocaust happened. All the soldiers from the various countries who liberated concentration camps have never denied it. Again, Eisenhower was so angry that he wanted documentation immediately so the world could see on film the unspeakable horrors. I'm extremely confident that Eisenhower never expected that one day U.S. citizens would idolize Nazis in this country. Like, ever. At all the trials for Nazi war criminals, can you point out which individuals denied that the Holocaust ever happened? All the documentation of the deaths done individually at each camp was plainly written down by German guards. All the bodies dug up outside the crematoriums, all the footage, all the testimonies from survivors to liberators, no one has denied this except some really, really stupid moron saying, hey, it never happened. What proof, legitimate proof, do any of you deniers have that proves the Holocaust never happened? How about if I said, okay, I declare World War I never happened? I mean, I wasn't there. I didn't know anyone who fought in World War I, so it couldn't have happened. World War II, that was definitely a made-up war. It started and filmed by Jews because they wanted their own country. Yeah, it never happened. I've heard idiots talk about the Holocaust being filmed in Hollywood. If that's true, simply provide us some of the names of any of the directors of these films, actors, producers, and locations. Fun fact. We filmed a lot of those scenes in Hollywood, and in order to ensure authenticity, we asked millions and millions of people to not eat for a couple of months. By your esteemed logic, here are a couple more wars that didn't happen. Let's start with the Civil War. I, again, don't know anyone who was in the Civil War. Furthermore, I've searched and cannot find anyone anywhere who was in any of the battles or can show me a picture or video with them in it. So, the Civil War never happened. Prove me wrong. Vietnam War, give me a break. The Jews filmed this classic war over 2 weeks in Napa Valley. It's taken a while for the Jews to gain some type of sympathy, so we rounded up a few thousand helicopters with new age cinematography, and we were able to rent some tanks, bazookas, and planes. We added some fantastic editing, and here you go. I wasn't in Vietnam, so it never happened. Also, during filming, we received a lot of help from Santa Claus and Tinkerbell. They assisted in pre- and post-production. We were very fortunate to get the guy from behind the curtain from the Wizard of Oz. That guy was fantastic. Also, I wasn't at the birth of any of my friends. Guess what? They weren't born. I mean, really, how can any of us confirm anything if we weren't there? Look, honestly, at all those insane medical experiments done to children and adults alike, the yanking of teeth, the flaying of victims, if you are still sticking with the "this is all made up," then you are a dangerous neo-Nazi, and by dangerous, I mean you're an outright moron, an idiot, which is dangerous. I don't understand you cowards denying the Holocaust. Assuming you are not mentally handicapped, Holocaust deniers are the dumbest, brainless, most irrelevant idiots who walk anywhere on this planet, in my humble opinion. See no evil, hear no evil. Here is another piece of information that Holocaust deniers or any other hate group can attempt to deny. Friedrich Kellner was a soldier for Germany in World War I who hated and opposed Hitler and the Nazis. While working as a justice inspector at a small courthouse, he wrote a diary to record his observations of the Nazi regime. Based on conversations, reading of newspapers, discussions with soldiers, etc., he described the various crimes of that regime. His diary is titled Mein Widerstand, meaning my opposition. Kellner's diary is 861 pages with 676 individually dated entries. According to David Castavans of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, quote, Kellner started writing his secret diary the day Germany invaded Poland to start World War II. He wanted the coming generations to know how easily young democracies could turn into dictatorships and how people were too willing to believe propaganda rather than resist tyranny and terrorism. In Kellner's now famous diaries, he rarely wrote about his own personal situation, but rather Nazi policies, propaganda, the war, injustices in the systems, inhumane deeds, and the genocidal intentions of the Nazis. In all of this, he considered the German people as accomplices before and after the fact, first voting Hitler into power and then acquiescing in the abuse of that power. Most Germans after the war would insist that they knew nothing at all about the state-sponsored genocide of the Jews. Yet very early in the war, Kellner recorded this in his diary, showing that word of atrocities reached the average citizens, even the small towns. This is something from Kellner's diaries, quote, a soldier on vacation here said he was an eyewitness to terrible atrocities in the occupied parts of Poland. He watched as naked Jewish men and women were placed in front of a long, deep trench and upon the order of the SS were shot by Ukrainians in the back of their heads, and they fell into the ditch. Then the ditch was filled with dirt, even as he could hear screams coming from people still alive in the ditch, end quote. Kellner continues, these inhumane atrocities were so terrible that some of the Ukrainians who were used as tools suffered nervous breakdowns. All the soldiers who had knowledge of these bestial actions of these Nazi subhumans were of the opinion that the German people should be shaking in their shoes because of the coming retribution. And there is no punishment that would be hard enough to be applied to these Nazi beasts. Of course, when the retribution comes, the innocent will have to suffer along with them. But because 99% of the German population is guilty, directly or indirectly, for the present situation, we can only say that those who travel together will hang together. That was by Friedrich Kellner. Hate groups. We live in a free country. I don't care about your affection for Hitler and the Nazis. I really don't. As I've mentioned previously, as long as your meetings and or rallies go no further than the laws that govern this country, knock yourselves out. If you want to hold weekly rallies, have a good time. If you attend daily Mein Kampf classes, enjoy. I do not care. Again, if it's legal, you should be able to flaunt your deep admiration for that sociopath wherever it's permitted. Just do it legally, meaning don't terrorize your fellow Americans, whatever their religion, creed, or culture. Let's examine the qualifications for belonging to an I Love Hitler group. I assume you remember that he was only accepting purebloods. After all, he said, quote, the folkish philosophy of life must succeed in bringing about the nobler age in which men no longer are concerned with breeding dogs, horses, and cats, but in elevating man himself. Yes, Hitler bred humans in perfection, purebloods, so to speak. The pure Aryan race is not you. How about we play a different game called We called it Spin the Genealogy Bottle. You ready? How many of you racists had pure Aryan blood relatives who fought in the Civil War? I'll take a guess. Maybe 10%, if that. You idiots should do a search on an ancestry website and then build a tree all the way back to your 10 times X great-great-grandfathers and great-great-grandmothers, etc. I bet your lineage ranges from less to much less than it does to being close to pure. Somewhere, the DNA of one of your Hitler foes probably ended up in your family tree. If you are somehow connected to a homosexual, a Jew, a Jehovah's Witness, a black, Pole, Russian, Romani, or anybody with any disability, guess what? You're disqualified. In Hitler's eyes, you are nothing but a mutt. You ain't pure. Hitler wouldn't have wanted to have anything to do with you and most likely categorized you in some area to work in a labor camp or murdered. And for the 100th time, you are already disqualified because you live in the United States. Any name, face, or likeness cannot be used outside of Germany and Austria. If any German-based anti-Semitic, racist, homophobic Nazi chapters wanted to sue you, they would have a very, very legitimate case. There were 8,000 Jews who fought in the American Civil War, and 225,000 American Jews who fought in World War I. How many of your pure Aryan blood relatives fought in World War I? I would say much less. Think about your unworthiness to be a Hitler acolyte. If he were alive, best case, you'd be somewhere making boots or canteens 18 hours a day and maybe given 300 calories of food before bedtime without any heat. Oh, don't worry. When you're dead in about 3 months, they'll have someone else to replace you. In fact, Jews settled in New Amsterdam on August 27th, 1654, and quickly started setting up a synagogue, trading, and establishing property rights and the right to be a defense protector of the city. Jews have been servicing the military in this country for 350 years. That's 350 years, way before any of your recessive DNA genes were anywhere near our great country. If you truly want to show us your Aryan lineages, I suggest you take a test from an accredited DNA company and post the results online. I'm talking a blind posting, meaning you'll post the results in real time on our Never Again Means Never Again website, and we can all view them together. I don't think most of you have the nerve to do it. And furthermore, what's your game plan when you find out that you're not a pureblood? We live at a time when we don't need to leave our couches to verify information. This really fuels my frustration and anger because anyone can simply check to see if something is accurate instantly from a handheld device. We can research what shaped Judaism itself. We can take deep dives into events that highlight a plethora of dangerous lies and flat-out deceptions, myths, and misconceptions. If you've done any research and are still anti-Semitic, then I will add you're an excuse maker and a lost cause to your name. When an entire people, like the Jews, have been falsely accused of something, anything, it falls to us to get the truth out. Let's explore how and why some are susceptible to misinformation. Most of it revolves around whom we trust. When we're angry at a friend or a family member, we as human beings respond in typical ways. Normally, it's an emotional response. We talk to that person and share our perspective, and they either accept it or they don't. Most of the time, and by a large margin, we work it out and we move on. Soon, it's back to laughter and hanging out, and the original anger is forgotten. That's it. There's almost always reconciliation with our influencers. These are the trusted people and organizations who help mold us throughout the years into becoming who we are. They shape the community around us. This applies to everyone, regardless of their background, religious beliefs, education, relationships, and on and on and on, until it's broken up. When the trusted becomes untrustworthy or lets down those who looked up to them, then it becomes a mad scramble for new leadership. This is one of my analogies for why we have hate groups. Hitler himself, as I explained in a chapter above, fell for a hate group, then became its leader. Below, I discuss how an insidious movement grew because the German people were so desperate and ripe for a takeover. Therefore, a new influencer, Hitler, was perceived as a savior who promised to rescue them from their woes, but initially kept all the details to how he planned to do it. Of course, there had to be a villain in this narrative to work. The Jews were blamed, and they still are today. For all of you forward-thinking Phi Beta Kappas, there are very few totalitarian dictatorships in the world. All these brilliant dictators that you strive to emulate and want to bring to the U.S. because you are so enlightened and misunderstood, I'm going to try and outline dictatorships. As I don't think most of you understand what happens to us, the civilians, in these types of governments. And make no mistake, Nazi Germany was run under a totalitarian dictatorship. Dictatorships may have worked hundreds or thousands of years ago. I doubt it, but they may have. Because in dictatorships, 99% of all the people are extremely poor and kept poor. Those 99% never see an influx of new cash. With dictatorships, a lot of that money is used to pay for one thing and is sure to always get paid first: their military. Revolutions, of course, can happen, but it makes little difference as they're usually followed up by another dictator, rinse, repeat, etc. Furthermore, dictatorships have no middle class. You're either connected to the top or you're screwed. So what outline do you guys have in order to get a dictator to power in this country? Once in power, how do you plan to feed the people, clothe and oversee commerce in the judicial systems? As the United States of America is already well past that. This country is very, very fortunate in many ways. One of, if not the biggest and fairest way any government can be set up is we can vote. In dictatorship, your main concerns are not getting tortured or starving to death. What I don't understand is why you don't highlight your governmental plans to the citizens of this country. This is a large and diverse society. So there's got to be at least 50, maybe 60 people in this country who can't wait to vote for your groups. Maybe 65 people. Whatever. In 2021, the outstanding Southern Poverty Law Center tracked 733 hate groups and 98 white nationalist groups in the United States. Overall, total membership numbers are not that large. However, unfortunately, they are growing. In the U.S., when thinking about a group most associated with anti-Semitism and racism, the KKK comes to mind. They are but one of many various factions of hate groups, and currently their groups have been involved in way too many backdoor infighting. This has led to a separation and formation of various other groups over the years. Also, it looks like the separation was influenced because somebody initially stole money. Ironically, this is something you morons should have absolutely no problem with. And why? If we go by your ideology of Nazism and see how Hitler was compensated and how he compensated himself, that money rightfully belongs to the head person of your organization. Only the head of your party is entitled to that money, just like the Nazi Party. Hitler simply took what Hitler wanted first and left crumbs for others. Is there any logical reason your groups won't do the same? I mean, you want an Aryan ruling class based on Hitler's ideology, so here you have it. Initially, I was going to go over various hate groups and list their names, locations, who are in charge of the parties, their beliefs, and what they're trying to accomplish, etc. As I started researching it, so it became obvious they all had basically the same wants and goals, so there was really no need to individually separate them. Again, the most prevalent group in the people's mind is the KKK. I will briefly recap their history, but unfortunately, they are not even close to being the only hate group in this country. Remember, every hate group's platform is, in essence, the same. So feel free to substitute KKK for any group out there that wants to hurt us or you. The KKK had things really rolling in the 1920s. They had almost 4 million members and were actively gaining political seats, which, by the way, frankly, is how it should be done and much more effective than 1,000 of your rallies since then. Even though they were founded in 1865, they went from being ignorant and racist against people of color and, over time, added Jews and Catholics to their oaths of hatred. Smart move, as being just bigoted and racist towards blacks was too small of a group for their targeted audience, and quickly, very quickly, they roughly quadrupled in size. These new and improved racists fizzled out in the late 1920s and early 1930s, and it took them 30 or so years to find another batch of ignorant bottom feeders to get a spike in new membership. Membership went back up in the 60s and 70s, even though there was a lot of infighting, penetration of law enforcement, and members getting tired of wearing those same ugly-ass, boring robes and hats. The current KKK is a mere shell of itself. We will monitor these groups, but with their current size, it will be minimal. By the way, if you naively believe these dangerous hate groups are loosely organized and should not be taken seriously, you are wrong. There have been hate groups that filed for and received nonprofit status. Eventually overturned, nonetheless, a very strong example that these people are lurking in the background of society and active on the internet. My ramblings. I need to take a deep breath before I roll out this next section. Okay, I can't emphasize enough my goal of presenting every individual involved in hate groups with as much information and facts as possible. I don't think they're given the opportunity to read or hear information that refutes lies they deem as facts, and obviously they aren't doing any research on their own. I hope people who need to read it do, and maybe it will help someone. With that in mind, let's go over this again. To all of you in the groups I haven't mentioned, what are you trying to accomplish? Can you spell it out in terms any non-racist could understand? The psychotic Nazis may have had the strongest military in the world with virtually unlimited support and resources, yet they still ended up getting their asses kicked. Furthermore, they had a 3+ year head start on rearmament, drafting, and training in front of all of Europe. By the end of the war, Hitler showed his millionth example of not caring about anyone but himself by training German shepherds how to reload a Glock. Desperate times. My point is, the Nazis had all of that going for them and still failed miserably. What could you possibly do to get even with 1/1,000,000th of their accomplishments? In the end, the blueprint to get out of your hero situation was suicide. I'm interested in knowing your commitment. Would you possibly kill yourself over anything those Nazi sociopaths endorsed? Are you a consistent Nazi or a Nazi wannabe? Or are there some things you agree with and others you don't? We are done with your anti-Semitic groups. You will no longer go after our women and children like cowards without recourse. Our elderly, families, friends, and synagogues, communities are done. We're done. Why has no anti-Semitic group on the planet ever flown to Israel and had demonstrations? I mean, think about it. It's guaranteed worldwide television coverage, and from the get-go, as soon as you arrive in Israel, you will quickly see there are Jews everywhere. Impossible to miss. You and your fellow members will have no need to look through your Commodore computers to find Jews to injure, as they'll be staring back at you as soon as you arrive. Of course, you and your buddies' shelf life will be around 2 minutes, but if you want to show your friends the hero in you, your true love and commitment to the Nazis, Israel is a country that's easy to get to, and hey, you might change some minds. Also, to save money, avoid scheduling conflict, etc., you will only have to book a one-way ticket. I'm quite confident that's all you'll need. All right, please try and clear this up for me, and one more time. What examples could anyone give in a hate group about a Jew, a black, an LGBTQ, a handicapped, etc., member that is keeping them down in the United States of America? We want specifics, not theory. So you Aryans want to continue a legacy of cowardice, weakness, intimidation, chaos, torture, unspeakable acts, etc. All right, what's your end game? What do you think life in Germany would be like had they won? You cling to a fallacy, a myth of a society that most of you would never have excelled in. A society where you and your family would have been owned by the state and your only thought would be of escape. Jews, blacks, homosexuals, and physically and mentally handicapped would not, nor did not, stop the real issue in Nazi Germany. And that issue was power. Hitler craved it, breathed it, and lived it. Power, control, intimidation, and money. Lots and lots of money. Everything else was just noise. All of you anti-Semites tarnish the greatest generation. Every American who served in Europe, the Pacific, and Africa fought to maintain our freedom, fought for our allies, and fought so Japan, Germany, and any other nation understands no one comes into our house and pushes us around. For someone to believe in a totalitarian dictatorships with murder and power as the top agenda is reprehensible. You are a stain on our former soldiers' legacies. These are not just Jews. These are Italians, Irish, Greek, Mexicans, and on and on. Hard workers, tough and fair. We look at Aryans and laugh. You are fortunate to live in the greatest country in the world, maybe outside of Israel, and the wealthiest nation ever put on a map. Yet, all of you have joined an organization of hate and exclusion. Since Hitler and the Nazis accomplished nothing, it's not ironic that your organizations have zero achievements too. Zero. Knowing that, and 89 years later, there is still not one thing that you can point to as a hate group accomplishment. Yet, for some mysterious reason, you don't seem to understand why. I'll help you out here. That's because 99.999% of the rest of the country isn't sitting around blaming others. Yeah, I mean, it's probably lower than 99.99. What the heck? I'm rambling a bit. But realistically, it's such a small number. It's not even worth discussing. And also, we're way too busy trying to get ahead on our own. Instead of trying to work yourself out of hard situations, you're always taking the easy way out by blaming others. I'm confident enough to say the real problem has always been and will continue to be you. You're the problem. Your hardships, issues, relationships, work, blame, whatever, when you actually break down all of your issues, you'll quickly see it's simply you. Jews, for whatever reason, are rarely cast aside or thrown out of countries. Nope. We just end up being murdered. Have any of you lost family members to ethnic persecution or judgmental ideologies that some idiots use their own interpretations to define? What about harassment? There have been zero back and forth confrontations between hate groups and Jews because we do nothing in response. Well, that's ending. It's got to end. Anyway, you believe in fallacies that can easily be debunked. Your ridiculous statements like Jews own all the banks, politicians, Hollywood, etc., are but just a few examples, and with a little amount of research, you will quickly find out it's just not true. As a percentage, yes, Jews have done very well in many fields, and there is no way we would ever apologize for that. But what you guys don't seem to be able to comprehend is no one gets a medical license following their own birth. It has to be earned. We live in a country that has grown and thrived because of our immigration policies. Would you like to know why you're getting passed up by minorities and the percentages of the U.S. population? You ready? Grab a calculator. All right. You ready? Okay. Because it's pretty simple. You and the rest of white America are not having enough kids. If you want to scream about illegal immigration or immigration in this country currently, I agree. It's an utter mess that needs to get cleaned up immediately. However, I have 2 words I will give you, which is the quickest and most logical advice to turn this around for you and your groups. 2 words: more babies. Why do you think what's in your mind justifies that you are more American than any Jew, black person, homosexual, Mexican, Iranian, Russian, pick a country, or any other minority in this country? You already know that Jews have been here for over 350 years, so your being here first argument is irrelevant. What's your legitimate argument? Do you really, truly believe that immigration is holding you back? Have you ever looked at data that shows how better off the country is and you individually are because of our legal immigration policies over the last 200 plus years? If you want to blame strife through laws and politicians in a field that is highly, highly dominated by elderly white men and women, then maybe blame them. You all have taught yourself a belief that isn't there. So why stop now? Hitler's decisions were based on what Hitler wanted. Do you think that Dollard went to any meetings asking for opinions? How many times from 1933 to 1945 do you think someone told Hitler no? His lackeys were also in totalitarian dictatorships, and so they, too, always said yes. He never thought about German people. He only wanted everyone to love him and admire him. However, it was the power. Nothing drove him more than his power. That was it. Since this is your future, you really need to know the power and control of others were all Hitler ever really wanted. You could certainly put money as being near the top of his list, but it was always power first. And he knew in Nazi Germany, with power came easier and quicker ways to obtain a lot of money, especially if you're on top. So it is power that you groups are looking for. Is that it? Because if that's it, good luck and get in line. I think somewhere in the early 1940s, Hitler actually forgot that he had citizens he needed to govern. Mein Kampf, the Enabling Act, murdering millions of civilians, imperialism, and looting. What did any of that have to do with helping German citizens? Do you think German citizens would have voted for that psycho in 1946? There's no question he screwed over Germany too. In his mind, power would give him the adoration of Germans and Austrians that he had always craved and wanted and needed. Initially, all he wanted was for German and Austrian citizens to plainly say, hey, Hitler did this for us, and hey, this couldn't have been done without Hitler. He needed that adoration. For that psycho, that thought lasted in his head for probably a few months in 1933. After that, and until he looked like an overcooked s'more, it was only about him. He didn't care at all about the rest of his staff, advisors, or anybody at some point. When his world-class narcissism took over in the mid-30s, there wasn't a decision made that wasn't all about him. None. I can't imagine what your meetings were like. I assume most of you can't wait for them. Do you guys have like healthy debates on what charities to donate all your fundraising efforts to? What hospitals you'll visit next? How many scientists are in these hate groups? Doctors, physicists, world travelers. The reality is you guys have nowhere else to go. You need to blame someone for your inadequacies. It's always the Jews. What on earth has a Jew ever done to you? You say we control banking? Give me a break. What bank? What banks? Or is this just one of those Rothschild things? Give me names. Tell me where all the funds go that suppress you and your family. What Jew-controlled bank has exploited you and your family or the government? I mean, how hard would it be for us to round up some military guys and tell them we'll pay off their mortgages if they eliminate all of you from your mom's basement? We could do that. Again, why don't you come out of the closet, okay, relax, it's an expression, and back more political candidates? How about you, a family member, a friend, get degrees in banking, law, medicine, whatever, to change the system? There's got to be racist scientists out there, so why don't you ask them to come out and speak on your behalf? How about moving your meetings to Main Street, throughout the nation in order to get more publicity? I just don't understand why you wouldn't want to maximize your exposure and highlight all your wonderful ideas and beliefs if that's what you really, truly, deeply believe in. 1,000-year Reich, yeah, he wasn't even freaking close. For Hitler, this was nothing more and nothing less than a one-time power grab dictatorship. Rule of thumb, when murder, imprisoning, and torture are a part of your political platform, not only do they never last long, but the philosophy usually doesn't bounce around to other countries to be mimicked. Why, you ask? Well, how about totalitarian dictatorships screw their citizens over, crush their economy, and 9 times out of 10, they're dead before or shortly after leaving office? Yay. When can we start? Okay, I have some questions. All right, I can do all the research I want, but my questions won't truly be answered until the decision makers weigh in. I'm going to ask some questions for any and all hate group members and bounce around a little bit on my questions. I would also like to understand where your platforms are currently. All right, here we go. Are you thinking your grassroots struggle will somehow, someday, start catching onto the public, or do you plan on taking a different route? Have you picked out locations where you plan to build gulags and internment camps? Any idea on dates for disbanding our current government, Supreme Court, and local and state laws? When do you guys plan on releasing your manifestos and doctrines on a national scale? What are your plans for habeas corpus? What are your plans for city, county, state, and federal policies? What are your syllabi for the roughly 27,000 high schools in the United States? What about the curriculum of the roughly 81,000 middle schools to first grade? Oops, right. Subtract 45% of the high school and middle school numbers out as they will be deported, I assume. Do you plan to federalize all Jewish-owned banks? Farming, construction, automotive, medicine, etc. If so, what are your plans for that? What about payroll benefits? I assume these issues and many, many more will all come out once in office. Will you offer health care or nationalize it? At least we've seen this play out before in the U.S., which ended September 3rd, 1783. And that was when a king who wasn't a meth head. Well, I wasn't there, so maybe we defeated the king. Anyway, we as a country haven't looked back since. Are you at least going to come out with a variety of new and updated Klan robes? Different colors, maybe a silk or cotton option. How about new accessories? Leather whips or fraternity paddles? I mean, if I'm thinking these things, I assume you guys have already sent them out to various tailors. And thanks in advance for the replies. Anyway, if Hitler did care a little bit at the beginning about Germany, maybe a little bit, and that's very early, the drug-addicted porn stash psycho wouldn't even surrender as his own ashes were polluting Berlin. There is no question he was clinically insane. Everyone always looks for reasons, justifications, and excuses for Hitler, regarding Hitler. It's not that difficult, and no one needs to overthink it. He was insane. If you truly want to understand Hitler, go get a book dealing with insane people and how they act. Read it, acknowledge it, move on. Hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of people were decimated and cities leveled in the final few weeks of the war for one reason and one reason only: power. Even then, he just could not relinquish it. You Aryan wannabes who love for Hitler it seems boundless will eventually gain everything Hitler gained. Nothing. Still don't believe me? Fine. Ask the president of your hate group to list all of the group's accomplishments since its founding. Just hand him a paper, straw wrapper, and whatever, and oversized Sharpie and save some time. But yeah, I'd like to see it. Isn't it stupid of you to admire a narcissistic, power-hungry coward who didn't and wouldn't surrender Berlin even as it was being reduced to rubble and the outcome had been decided? Come on. Hitler was already reduced to kindling and was posthumously asking the Germans to continue the fight. Yep, here's a real folk hero here, ladies and gentlemen. He really cared about Germany and its citizens. And again, why did he kill himself? If he could have gone on trial and espoused all the wonderful, positive examples about Germany under Nazism and let the world hear his great forward-thinking ideologies, why didn't he do that? He could have received the worldwide attention that he so desperately craved. It would have been televised, radio, print, movie reels, everywhere. Think how many people he could have spread his wisdom and ideology to. Well, why didn't he? Well, we'll never know, but more importantly, why are you trying to continue his madness that he didn't want to? Hopefully by now you're starting to understand why he didn't. He didn't because he was a sociopathic, murdering, money-grubbing, power-hungry dictator, as mentioned, and certifiably insane. He took the cowardly way out, just like all his fellow yes-men ended up doing too. Some by suicide, some by hangings, some by shootings, but most by fleeing. Why didn't all those brave believers in Nazism stick around to regroup? Think about it. There have been Nazi groups worldwide since the end of World War II, yet the monsters who founded, expanded, and were all part of it hid, denied, and abandoned it. 5 minutes. Well, I say 5 minutes after the war. It was certainly well before then when they knew it was over. But why did they do that? We know the U.S., Great Britain, and others let 99% or more of them go free and couldn't be bothered to bring them to trial. So why did they flee? For all of you anti-Semitic racists, how do you justify your heroes bailing, hiding, and denouncing everything you guys currently stand for? Do you offer excuses for their behavior? I mean, they are your guys. I mean, the Nazis are your people. Any clarification from any of your groups would suffice. I'll take any of them. Not many people run or denounce things they enjoy or love, so you could help my curiosity on this. Thanks in advance. The last time Goebbels saw Hitler, he told him that he was going to go on the radio and tell the people of Germany that Hitler was going to, quote, die fighting with the troops, end quote, until the end. Right before the last of their millions of lives, and even though they would already be dead themselves, your heroes had countless more soldiers and civilians killed, which could have easily been avoided by simply surrendering Germany. Can any of you explain to me why they didn't do this? Pathetic and cowardly. When I think of neo-Nazis, white supremacists, etc., that's one of the first things that comes to my mind. Could anyone justify why Hitler and the Nazis allowed German men, women, the elderly, children, and babies to die well after Nazi Germany had been defeated? I think it's safe to say that during the first go-around, this ideology didn't go so well. I mean, it led to the deaths in World War II of around 70 million people. The war basically wiped out all the Jews in Europe. It petrified a country full of German people who were so scared of their own neighbors turning them in for virtually any reason that most of the citizens wouldn't leave the confines of their homes. Plus, they sent their kids off to war for a madman who ended up getting them killed and provided nothing for them anyways. I assume you, Aryans, already know this and are looking forward to living in these types of conditions. Or maybe, just maybe, you can do better. Go back to bed, because you can't. Here's a quick hate group Q&A I threw together. I've covered a lot of articles, books, documentaries, etc., in trying to uncover as many facts as possible to hopefully educate whoever reads this and to also try and dispel so many lies. I figured if I show or highlight enough lies, hate group members may finally ask themselves, what on earth am I doing? And go out and do something productive. So I took a poll, and the voices won out in this poll. To clarify, no one knows that I wrote this book. And who's going to want to deal with any backlash from this anyways, right? So the voices who wanted this Q&A are the ones in my head, And if you don't like either the questions or the answers, you can complain to them. Before I start, I would like to thank myself for all of these outstanding questions and phenomenal answers. Question. Let's see here. Why did it look like every time Hitler walked by somebody, they would give that facial look like they had just stepped in dog crap? Doggy do. It's a good question. Okay, answer. Since no one is going to believe my answer, I ask you to look it up when you're done reading. Anyway, it's no secret that Hitler's had stomach issues. So when his doctors was giving him regular pills and injections, he just simply added a few more pills to help with his stomach. Well, Rebecca Beamer and William Kennedy went in deep for a fascinating article from Grunge magazine. One of Hitler's many illnesses was colitis and irritable bowel syndrome. Now, you can have various symptoms as a result of this illness. However, Herr Hitler's symptoms, Herr Hitler's symptoms, quote, match with Dr. Schenk's writings on Hitler and would explain the Fuhrer's particularly repugnant reputation, end of quote. Hitler had chronic flatulence, or, as they put it more bluntly, he had constant farting. Can you imagine all of his underlings having to deal with the second ugliest person on the planet? No one will ever replace Himmler as the first. Constantly spitting on them and now being constantly farted on too. I'm surprised he didn't get in front of this and have a national fart day to prove he was even the best at that. It also answers the age-old question, why did Hitler always have a big pile of cow dung in his office? Simply to counter or try to counteract his smell. Makes sense. What about his friends and families? My gosh, I hope they received fart medals or something. Anyways, I could go on for days with this one, but I hope that answers your questions. What a fantastic article written by those two. I think we still have time to submit their article for the Pulitzer, right? Okay, next question. Let's see here. Was it true that Hitler was full of crap? Answer, yes. See question number 1. Okay, someone mentioned Himmler. Do you have a question? Yes. Okay, here's a question. You've mentioned Himmler's physical appearance a few times. Do you have anything besides your opinion to support your contention of his looks? Answer, I have many, but I'll just use this coveted and respected polling company. To start the new century and end in 1945, the world held a secret contest on appearance. There was a runoff for second place because such a clear-cut winner of the ugliest person on the planet could not be topped. The inaugural winner was none other than Heinrich Himmler, a title he would not relinquish for 45 straight years until he couldn't stand looking at himself anymore and thankfully for all, killed himself. Question. Does it make sense on any level for hate groups to target Jews in this current climate? Answer. I'm going to give you guys a piece of advice that is extremely unfortunate for me, and I hope I can take it back before it's too late. You and your groups are violating laws and morals to get rid of a race, the Jewish race. That's, quite frankly, already doing it for you. If you just wait it out, assimilation might just dissolve our religion in the United States within the next 100 years or less. And you guys will have to do nothing for it to happen. No jail, no probation, no it's on your record, nada. Furthermore, Jewish women have the lowest birth rate among all ethnicities in an already very small religion. Unfortunately for you guys, you're going to have to get off your butts and find another group that you feel fleeced you over, and you can blame for all your excuses. Question. Since all the top Nazis padded their resumes with monumental achievements they never earned, do you know their reputation as athletes? Answer. All right, who asked that question? That's my first. Anyway, I knew someone who went out with a friend to play on a basketball court in the mean streets of Berlin. The story goes, it was these 3 ugly dorks wearing tube socks, headbands, and sunglasses, practicing underhanded free throws. Anyway, we obviously weren't going to pick them up, but we noticed that one of them continually circled the area where we had to walk through to get onto the courts. Well, we found out later that his name was Hitler and that he had a built-in butt repellent, which smelled so bad and was so constant that no one dared to enter. So we had to pick them up. I said to that kid Hitler, I said, don't guard them while facing each other. I only want your butt to face them while on defense. And you seem to know what to do from there. Don't judge me. I just wanted to win. I'll say this, and if any of you were there, you would agree. But these were the three ugliest, hideous, smelliest, unsightly humans I had ever seen. I just wanted to point out how disgustingly ugly they were, not just as individuals, but also as a group. So I felt we might actually have a chance to win, as no one wanted to guard them. Well, all three of them were like kindergarten height. One guy whose butt should have been insured. Another guy, Himmler, was so ugly that the dogs at the dog park next door wouldn't allow them to hump him. And trust me, we watched him try. Now, my concern was that, what am I going to do with that last guy, Goebbels? I was concerned about someone stepping on him. He was in his late teens, and I would guess he was around 3'4"-ish. I told him we could use him for special plays on offense. So I named him Stepstool, as he would literally let us use his head to jump off of. I've never seen a bigger brown noser than him. He told us we could kick him in the nuts if we could find them. We couldn't. After the game, which we lost in about 5 minutes, I asked them a few questions because they were not from this area. I was talking to them, and I quickly realized how extremely stupid all three were. I was starting to get frustrated, not only from the loss, but they were constantly interrupting me. Finally, I shouted, "You three idiots couldn't run a turnstile," as they wouldn't shut up about running Germany one day. Yeah, that was going to happen. The only thing that may have been worse than their utterly unathletic and ugly appearances was that two kids who were playing in our game suffered broken ankles. Yep. That fart machine weirdo also showed an ability to spit like a garden hose and was turning the court into a skating rink. Hitler just wouldn't shut up while trying to coach in a game he knew nothing about. These three goofy trolls and the many more you haters revere are people you would have never hung out with yourselves. Having these three morons as your heroes tells 100% of the world immediately who you are. They'll never need or want to talk or communicate with you, as there's no need. We already know you based on your association alone. Germany was definitely down after World War I, and yes, their economy and unemployment rates were bad for a few years. But to elect Hitler and get his awful murdering lackeys and then listen to them blame everything on the Jews will go down as the greatest con job in the history of politics. Question: can a coward shoot a gun? Well, it seems like it. Robert Bauer, the psychopath who murdered 11 innocent lives and injured 6 others at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, certainly qualifies. But before I can make a complete ruling, I need to examine Robert's actions after his graduation from Harvard. Robert dropped out of high school. However, he quickly worked his way up to becoming a delivery driver for a bakery. I'd like to go further in depth with his stellar bio, but that was it. My guess is if Jews or gays wouldn't have victimized him so many times, he would have been a full-time physicist or worked in risk assessment at NASA. Somehow, this genius found the time to post various brilliant quotes like, quote, "Diversity means chasing down the last white person," end quote. Yes, it does, Robert. Yes, it does. Anyway, it's nice to have heroes, and certainly upstanding, hardworking geniuses like Robert Bauer are hard to find. With 11 anti-Semitic murders to his name, the only thing left for you guys to answer is, where do you intend to erect his statue? I'm still amazed that hate groups can look up to martyrs like Robert Bauer, Hitler, Himmler, Goebbels, thousands of others with no accomplishments. Truly, the only consistent accolades they cared about were doing whatever, and I mean whatever it took, to please Hitler. That was it. Questions, what would Hitler do? What would Hitler do? By the way, does anyone know how many people those three actually killed themselves? Hitler, Goebbels, Himmler, Hess. How many people do you think those guys killed? After considering all facets of your question, combined with the outcome, yes, a coward can shoot a gun. Well, I hope that answers your question. I would like to add on a personal note that I looked at all the names of the people who were killed and injured in Pittsburgh, and know they lived fruitful and happy lives. I'm sure they all had their ups and downs, like most, but reading about them and seeing what they did with their lives and how they made something of themselves infuriates me, knowing an ignorant, moronic coward murdered them for no cause. Anti-Semites must know that a response from us is justified, right? When you have one of your own psychotics, neophyte murderer kill unarmed and unaware Jews at a Saturday morning service, understand this. It will not be forgotten. It will not be forgotten. All right, before I start getting pissed off, question. You say blacks, the LGBTQ community, the handicap, etc., don't affect you, right? My question is, what do you mean by that, and why would the hate group community think the opposite? Answer. As you know, I'm very open-minded, so without rushing into judgment, I decided I would do some of my own research to see where hate groups were gathering their data from. Here's what I did. I picked 10 random days over a 3-week period where I was going to do my natural, everyday type errands. However, I focused on observing all the black men, women, and children accused of always screwing over hate groups. I wrote down every negative incident only, from staring at me to being shot. I did the same experimentation on the LGBTQ community, the handicap, and a lot of other minority groups. And here are my results. 0. There were 0 times that one person in any of those minority groups did one thing, anything that affected me. Not one. In the course of 10 days, waiting with pen and pad in hand, nothing. What's your data? Gosh. Yes, I know statistics of incarceration in one-parent homes plague the black community, but those are minor talking points from hate groups. I focused on only individuals, and so I ask you, what has any minority of any group ever done to you that is keeping you down? I don't know, questions, jeez. Okay, another question. Before Hitler's smoldering body started the first German forest fire, did he finally admit his faults and accept blame for Germany's defeat? Here's my answer. In the end, in his last farewell, Hitler had his secretary type out a few of his last statements. Would you like to know the first thing your hero said? He blamed the Jews for Germany losing the war. There are people who actually put this psycho on a pedestal. I'm not kidding. That's what he said. What do we now? Example 10 billion as to why no one could take any hate group seriously. It's based on their ideologies, that's for sure. He was insane. If you're in a hate group, would you please explain Hitler's comments? He also had Fegelein shot in the bunker 2 days before Hitler had himself turned into a campfire. And why? 2 reasons. 1, because he was Himmler's representative in the bunker, and Hitler was mad at Himmler for contacting the U.S. for surrender. And number 2 is Hitler was frustrated that he no longer had any veins left to shoot up his heroin. Hitler was out of veins. Okay. Question. Are Jews and other minority groups worldwide being closed-minded to all of the benefits regarding membership in a hate group? Another great question. I've thought about this, and you know what? Maybe we are. I mean, Hitler was so brave when it was his turn to face adversity head-on that I guess it's inspiring enough to rethink my position. Maybe an esteemed potential future hate group colleague can answer our questions. Hitler wrote to others to continue the fight, even after his death. I guess that's what you guys are trying to do currently, right? Okay, so sell us on it. Let's hear it. I'm Jewish, so obviously I'm not your target audience, but I'm open-minded. What do you got? Pitch me. Why do you love wanting to or being a Nazi? Now, this may also not go over well with blacks and handicap and LGBTQ, and mentally handicapped, etc. Oranges, snow globes, whatever. But what the heck? I want to hear it. Sell me. Enlighten me. Convince me. This is the last question of this Q&A. Question. And this is a 2-part question. If I wanted to visit Hitler's grave, is there funding available for my local or national hate group chapter? Also, do I need to make reservations or get tickets in advance, knowing the large daily attendance volume he must receive? Answer. I cannot find an answer on funding for your exciting trip to visit your hero, but nothing is stopping you from canvassing your neighborhood for donations. Here is some information that should help you with prearranging reservations prior to your visit so you can make sure you have a reserved spot to visit the grave. Today, if you want to go visit the site where Hitler's body once resembled a Bunsen burner, you will see one of the largest and heaviest monuments ever erected for a deceased former failed painter. It's been cordoned off, and it's officially a parking garage. Well, it's nice to see such a reverent historical site that allows people to walk all over it, dogs to crap on it, drunks to puke on it, passerbys to spit on it. Not sure who we should thank for that, but thanks. If you're planning on making a pilgrimage to his final spot, there's plenty of parking is available. I have a question, though. Are there any particular songs you guys sing around the machine that dispenses tickets? Do you fire up some meth or heroin and ode to Hitler, homage while you're still parked, or you get out of your cars? Okay. Jeez, okay. He's asking to take one more question. Fine. Question. Since we all know Jesus was born Jewish, raised Jewish, and died Jewish, what do you think God's reaction to you will be knowing you harmed or killed Jews? My answer? I don't know. Well, thanks to all who participated in this Q&A session. I try not to brag or boast when I know I'm right about something, even though sometimes it's hard to stay humble. However, I do want to point out that I've been telling people for years that Hitler was full of crap. Now you know, he really was. Thanks for listening.